listening to the Not Your Average Culture podcast, where we have candid conversations about personal growth, business, and creativity. Because, let's be honest, creative or not, life can get messy, especially if you are a creative entrepreneur. But you don't have to go at it alone. There's a whole community and culture around the lifestyle of creatives. So here on this podcast, I'm making the space to have open conversations with a wide range of dynamic people about how to successfully maintain your business, keep your sanity, while owning your authenticity and staying inspired along this journey. I'm your host, Chardeney. Let's get to it. Hello, and welcome back to the Not Your Average Culture podcast. In case you are tuning into this season for the very first time, the theme for this season is called Creative Flow. If you haven't done so already, check out the first episode of this season. I share some background about the guests I'll be featuring and why I'm highlighting their stories, and explain a bit about what I mean by creative flow and how I'm attempting to tap into it. But I'm excited to introduce to you all today's guest, Mathew Linzner, because he knows all about how to make the most of each season we are in. I'll have him officially introduce himself in a bit, but before I do that, I want to share what our conversation is about and go over a few podcast housekeeping things. So this conversation is primarily about making a living from your craft, meeting people where they are at, and embracing the journey of starting where you are until you get the resources on a large scale. I think that this is so fitting for this podcast because, as some of you know, I independently produce this podcast, and I do this in my spare time and reach out to folks and ask them for their time, which is very valuable. So there's no fancy studio I invite guests to come into. Sometimes we're recording this over the phone, over a Zoom call. I simply ask guests to come as they are because I truly believe that their message and story is worth sharing. I don't mail out microphones or do any of that other fancy stuff yet, but plan to do so when I have the funding and resources to do so. So this is a shameless plug before we dive into things. If you want to support the podcast, your contribution goes towards improving the quality of the show. It goes towards sound engineers, microphones, etc. You will notice we have a few sound hiccups in this episode, but I encourage you to stay tuned through the very end because this is such a refreshing conversation, and I think if you're into agriculture or any of the other creative topics I typically talk about, then you will find some type of value in this conversation. So with all that being said, let's dive into this episode. I'm just going to jump into things. I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you before, but obviously you know now, like I have a podcast, and thank you again for joining me today. But I never really gave you like the background of my podcast because this is something that I've been doing since like 2018. It's been something that's been a passion project, and it's something I've been doing off and on where essentially I invite folks on to join me and talk about what it is that they do, how they got into their career path, or just talk about some of their personal and professional projects that people were working on or involved in, and like the steps that they took to get to where they are and things of that nature. Now, hindsight, I was just reaching out to people whom I was reading their books or coming across their work from other podcasts, articles that I've read online, or people that I've just kind of crossed paths with. And I was like, wow, like this person is dope. I like what it is that they're doing, and I'm interested in inviting them on the show to talk in more detail about, you know, their work and what it is that they're doing. So it's been a while since I've done that, and I'm getting back into it. So I figured since, you know, you are like a client of mine, you've grown to be like a passive mentor, a friend, an acquaintance, and you have been working and allowing me to document the work that you've been doing for the past almost 2 years. So if you don't mind, can you just share with my online community a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Right on. My name is Mathew Linzner. I run my own business called 10 Before 3. It is an agricultural-based business, and I'm trying to see if I can make a living growing and selling vegetables, herbs, anything that comes out of the earth. But really also have another job. I work for an organization called Growing Together, And what we do is we do school-based garden installation and education. So I run a program for that organization called Farms to Schools. And what our program does is take unutilized land in West Contra Costa County and we transform it into production farms. And so we did an analysis of all the open spaces out here in West Contra Costa Unified School District and found that there was actually a significant amount of land that was just kind of sitting on school property. And so we proposed to launch this project. And that was the first project that you kind of came and helped document, which was the transformation of an old baseball field into a production farm at a middle school, Betty Thompson Middle School. So, so that's one aspect of the work. Honestly, the work is totally intertwined with intergenerational learning and really trying to just get folks to reconnect to the things that are healthy and nourishing for them. So being outside, working the land, eating healthy food, interacting with each other, and creating healthier communities. So there's multiple different tenets of the program, but at the end of the day, the goal is to get more people involved with working the land, growing food, and creating healthier communities.
Nice. So how did you get into agriculture and what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, well, it's funny because growing up, I never really liked helping. My mom always wanted me to help out in the garden. And I was kind of like, whatever about it. But what we always did was go camping and go hiking and like get out of the city and go up to the mountains. And for me, that was my safe place where I just felt like I could really be myself. I found a lot of peace, and really like connected in a deeper way on those excursions out of the city. And so it wasn't until actually I graduated high school, I went away up to the Northwest to go study. And I thought I wanted to study like environmental justice and, like environmental like studies and, just like how can we protect our natural places. But I kind of like got really disenfranchised with that work and just realizing that it was a lot of like policy or it just didn't really resonate with me. But up there, I also got exposed to the concept of how interconnected food production is with ecological health and how that also is intertwined with our own personal health. So for me, it was like kind of a journey of like figuring out, I was actually transitioning into becoming vegetarian and vegan. And so I was like exploring a lot about like, like plant-based diet and growing food kind of got interesting. And so through my like exploration with environmental studies and kind of my, dissatisfaction with that, I realized like I had this aha moment where I don't know whether I was like reading or studying, but basically realized that like the majority of the land that people interact with in the world is agricultural land. So what we do to the land, the farms, like what we do to grow our food, how we take care of the land could actually have like a bigger impact on, overall ecology and environmental health than, doing like Earth First or like, Sierra Club stuff. Now, not to say that work's not important, but for me, it was a real clear path then because I was also like diverging away from the corporate food system and, genetic engineering was really big. Like there was a huge fight to like get Monsanto to label their GMO products. And it was just, there was a lot of that going on at the time too. And so it all just kind of like came to a head. I actually changed schools and studies partway through my undergrad. And I went up to Evergreen State College in Washington, Olympia, Washington. And they have the second largest campus in the country, but the majority of it is actually for it. But they also have a school-based production farm. And so they have a whole ecological agricultural program. And the cool thing about that school, which I really enjoyed, was that you take one 16-unit course. And so rather than having, 4 credits here and having all these different classes, you're able to really immerse into the studies. And so I spent 2 years studying soil science, cropping systems, and, being on the farm there. And then I always wanted to return back to the Bay and do urban ag work. And so I came back and, I tried to land somewhere and figure out what was I going to do. And so I started working actually in food service, like cooking, washing dishes, serving food. And through that, I found this really cool little tea house in East Oakland called Deep Roots Urban Tea House. And it was just like it was an independent business. This lady had a really dope vision, what she was trying to do. But what was cool about that tea house was it was really connected to community org, especially in the neighborhood in Fruitvale. And so I met some folks from an organization called Oakland Leaf. It was just really starting to do some work. They were doing after school programming, and they had this plan to launch a program called Love Cultivated Schoolyard. And they didn't really know what it was going to be, but they knew that it was like a school-based garden program. And so there was this new school that had just been built, and some of the folks within Oakland Leaf had helped design the school, and they had designed like a pretty large garden. And so they asked me if I wanted to come in and run that program and develop it. And I ended up actually working in that organization for 15 years and developed a pretty dope program. And in my opinion, we ended up working at 7 different schools in East Oakland, running elementary, middle school, and paid high school internships. We were running programming for, over 100 students in a week. We had a really in-depth high school internship program where we were training them to be urban farmers, but we were also training them to be mentors and teachers and role models for the elementary, middle school students. And then those high school students then ran garden programming for those younger students. So it was like pretty cool, pretty robust program, but it was still pretty limited in that we were like growing in, 4x8 raised planter boxes. We had some small gardens, and it's just the amount of food we were producing was pretty small because it's tough. You don't have a lot of space.
Yeah.
We did actually expand to Castlemont High School, which has a 1-acre production farm, 1/4-acre production garden. And so that expansion that I really kind of stepped up my experience in actual farming, agriculture. And I knew that was this is what it was.
And that's something I kind of wanted to deep dive into and just get you to talk more about, because the biggest thing that what I have been enjoying with collaborating with you on this project and working with you on this project is because this is almost like a step up from home economics. And I know a lot of schools don't really offer home economics where they teach you how to cook inside of high school or elementary school. And there's a lot of folks who grown who still don't really understand the importance of how to cook a nutritional meal and things of that nature. So I kind of want you to expand and elaborate on the program that you have built for these students and how it is kind of what it's doing for the students and how it kind of connects to that home economics piece and how you're kind of bringing it back into the school system, but in a way where it's also inviting students to learn how to grow their own food.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy because in all my time, doing this work with, urban students, young people, the majority, I would say there's 5 to 10% of the people who just will refuse to do it, right? The majority of the people, you get 10 to 15% of the people who are just about it right away. Maybe they did it. We have a lot of students, who came to this country. So they have in their family experience, they have history of growing food. Maybe they even themselves worked on farms when they were little. But then we also have a lot of students growing up here. Maybe their granny did it in their backyard, or maybe they go to relatives. So there is still this connection, even though I would say it's really important that we maintain it because it's getting lost quick, with every generation, right? We lose so much knowledge. But most students, they'll come out there and they'll be like, ooh, I don't want to get dirty. Like, my shoes, my clothes, whatever.
So how do you switch their mindset around that? Like, how do you, because you have a lot of students involved in the program. Like, it's not just one school. You're at like 3 schools now. And so I'm like wondering, like, how do you convince, not even convince, but how do you introduce this program to new schools to get them to, allow you to change the space that isn't really being used for anything? And then also the students that are there, like, how do you motivate them and get them excited to actually learn about it? Because there aren't a lot of students who are even aware that there are career paths in agriculture.
Yeah, well, like, right. I mean, that's part of the work, right? So that's actually like what we're really trying to do right here, right now is create this clear connection to agriculture and entrepreneurial opportunities, right? Career. Like, growing up in the Bay, growing up in a city, we don't know farmers. Like, I don't know. I never knew anybody who was farming and made a living farming. Well, I would just say, like, to go back to that piece about, like, when folks come out, it's like, like anything new, it's going to take people a little bit of time to adapt. So my role is to just, like, be patient and help facilitate that transition from discomfort into comfort, and so we play a lot of games. We just have fun. Like, you got to have fun. You got to make it cool. You got to make it light and fun. Or if it's just work, people going to get turned off quick, right? So, I feel like it's interesting, like, talking to you about the journey, because I think if you had asked me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I think I would want to be where I am now then. But I could not be where I am now without having put in all those years doing it the way I did, right? So it's like, it's just a means to an end. I feel like I was an educator first and a farmer second, and now coming out here to this new project, which we've been doing for like 2 years, now we're going into the second year, or we're coming out of the second, going into the third year. I'm a farmer and an educator. So I kind of have like that skill set. Like, I know how to hold groups. I know how to engage students, kind of know how to, judge when people are ready to do more or when they still need time. Like, those are nuances that are really important for young people. But I think, honestly, like, the land, the wonders of the earth, they just call us. Like, we can get kids entertained by just turning over logs and looking at what's underneath, and just looking at the bugs or picking flowers, like simple things like that. For those students who maybe just need more time, not quite ready to get into it. So it's like, I try to, like, meet them where they're at, because what I don't want to do is alienate anybody. You just want everybody to feel like this is something they can access, and they can access it to the degree that they want to, and whenever they're ready, they can go for more.
Yeah, that's so real. And it's so interesting that you say that, the part about the journey, about, like, you are, like, you're content and happy at the space that you're at now, and 5 years ago you didn't know that you would be in this place. And, like, personally, I can relate to that, and I can connect to that, because I've also had to do a lot of shifting in my own personal journey as well, of just being, like, a creative. And even, like you said, even earlier on, like, you have 2 jobs. That's kind of like the norm out here in the Bay. Like, people hold down multiple different jobs because that's the time and the space that we're in. And I also remember, like, we briefly had this conversation about, like, when you ask for an abundance of work or opportunities, but also being prepared to take on the task when the opportunities arise. And that's something, in my journey, I've had to learn how to shift and figure out, like, okay, what things do I need to put into place so that way I can manage and maintain, all the different opportunities and the things that are coming my way. And I'm curious, for you in your field, what are some things that you've had to have a personal mind shift around, or systems you've had to put in place in order to expand on the things that you're doing and, make this program accessible to, other schools in other areas?
Yeah, that's a cool question. I like that, the way you frame that, because I think a lot of times we feel like things happen to us and we're we don't have any power over what happens to us, you know? And so then we're like, I can't help it that the situation is like this, right? But at the end of the day, like the power we have is like how we deal with it. So I would just say like, I feel pretty blessed in this area in West Contra Costa County. I feel like the timing was just right for me to come and start this project. We work with the school district, you know, they provide us the land, resources like water, at no charge. And so what we do in turn is we provide a service. You know, obviously we develop the land and we're developing this program, which is a huge win for them. But we do the education piece as well. But, you know, being in a community, being at a school, you oftentimes will get different players who have different ideas or different things. And sometimes it's not necessarily like what the goal of the program is or the goal of the project is. But I feel like as a leader, it's really important to be open to different ideas and to give things a try, you know, like to not just be closed off and say, no, we're not doing that. We're only doing it this way because that's what we decided. Mm-hmm. I found that rather like just being open to, you know, allowing people to come into the space, kind of give ideas, engage with the space in ways in which maybe I wouldn't necessarily have thought of. You know, obviously, like giving people things is huge. Like growing on a farm, you know, people come, I want them to leave feeling really excited. So we always try to give people a little bit of food or some flowers to walk away with. You know, little things like that go a long way. And so, yeah, you know, like honestly, the challenge in this work too is like balancing it all, because the end of the day, like we need to grow the food, we need to be able to process the food, harvest and distribute the food, or else it's not successful and the program's not doing what it needs to do. And that takes a lot of time and energy. But we also need to serve the community and engage them and work with our young people and teach our young people. So, you know, finding that balance is definitely a challenge. It's a constant dance. And with the changing of the seasons and, you know, the ebbs and flow of the work, you know, we get like hit with a lot of work in a really small amount of time. And then we get hit with periods of time where it's kind of just like cruise control. So, you know, just like no day is the same. Every day is different. Every week's different. And so being flex and being able to adapt in that way is really important too.
Yeah, that's so real, because even I've kind of thought about that in a way, and just like the nature of how people work, there are seasons for when, you know, it's like you got to go really hard and like, you know, putting in the work to do something. Then there are moments where you have time to rest. And so just, you know, preparing for each of those seasons accordingly. So I'm happy that you mentioned that, because I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, it's just, you know, one career path, you're always on go mode. You know, and there are different ebbs and flows of it, and there's seasons for everything. So that's one thing I try to keep in mind as well, just like knowing like when is the season for like going super hard, and then the seasons for like when is it time to kind of like be on relax, recharge, and, you know, figuring out what to do for the upcoming year or the, you know, the days ahead.
Yeah, it's like I feel you. We're like so lucky being farmers, in that we're so close to the season and the changes, you know, but like it's like that time for incubation, that internal hibernation time. It's so important, and our society doesn't value it. You know, we don't value sleep and rest. You know, I used to actually, like before I came out here to be a farmer, I was a soccer coach. And I was a high school soccer coach for a number of years. And I would always tell my players, you know, young boys got a lot of energy and they want to just, you know, hit it hard all the time. But the equal part of your workout is your recovery. Like you need to give that other aspect the recognition and the attention it deserves, or you can get hurt. And it's the same thing with like us. Like I feel like that's why there's so much illness in our society, is because we don't value that rest and recovery time. We don't even get it, you know, like women don't even get it when they have a baby, right? Like you expected to be back in the office like 2 months later. So I agree with you, you know, we got to get that. We got to really put that forward. And I feel like that's our role as leaders and mentors. It's like we need to model this for everyone, for our young.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I'm gonna set this boundary. Like, no, we're gonna scale it back right now. Or, hey, dude, I know you're tired, but we gotta hit it hard. It's like we gotta get all this done by next week, or else we're gonna get behind.
Right. That's so real. So what other advice or resources can you share with myself and also the audience that can be useful for, anyone interested in revitalizing underutilized land, or maybe bringing this project to a local school or community near them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like trying to think about myself like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, like young and idealistic. And I would go and take calendula. It's this beautiful flower, really good for us. It self seeds really easily. Not native, but it's a good one. And there was this house near me that would always have the flowers, and there were seeds everywhere. And so I'd always just take them and find little areas, on my walk to the BART where there was nothing growing, and I would throw the seeds there, and then I would come back months later and be like, oh, look, the plants are growing, right? So it's like finding those opportunities to practice, and I think the challenge that most of us have is limited resources, right? Like land access is a huge one. We're not all in the position that I'm in where you just get, big pieces of land and the school's like, yeah, come and do it. But I think that, you can take those baby steps to get there, right? So like starting a small garden in your backyard, in your front lawn, in your neighbor's lawn, in the curb space, like having pots. I think just practicing, learning, and having fun. Like for me, I'm always like, what's the thing that's gonna get me excited to learn about this year? And that's kind of like, I feel like we gotta all hop on that wave of, continually pushing ourselves to learn new things. Don't stop. Like somebody who's been a professional at something for 30, 40 years still has something to learn. And so like remembering that and then finding the joy in it, like what gets you excited? What gets you happy? What makes you really like used to go and do it? And then try to make it happen, and that's like obviously easier said than done. We got a lot of limitations and obstacles. But there, there's obviously a lot of folks already doing the work. So find an organization that's doing something similar to what you want to do and just reach out to them about volunteering. Go to open farm days, support people, like buy from local farmers. It may cost a little bit more, but that money goes a lot further. Like we can't compare what we're doing to what they're doing in the San Joaquin Valley where they have, 400-acre farms and it's all mechanized and computerized. Mm-hmm. But what we can do is say like, we're creating a rich ecosystem for, the goal is for generations, right? So there's a difference, and I think like, it's hard, man. People don't want to spend money for food. They don't want to spend it. And they're used to getting food for cheap. And it's hard making a living selling vegetables.
It is. It's hard making a living selling art, vegetables, almost anything these days. Like trying to convince people like, you need this, the importance of this. Like this is why this matters. Like it's hard. And so that's why I kind of do what I do, which is like I try to share and document the process of things, because people see the end result and they think like, oh, well, this should be easy. Like you do this, so, and it's available, or they think that everything is just so accessible because maybe we have grocery stores almost in some areas, it's everywhere. So we think like, oh, like it's never going to run out. And so it's just kind of like this expectation of like, it's already there. And they don't really understand the work that goes into it, is basically what I'm trying to say. And so you have to explain
that word.
The value and everything that's being put into it and why it is important. So just as much as we are like producing these things, we also have to show like the work that goes into it and why it is that valuable. Because I think sometimes people forget.
That's why I really appreciate our collaboration, because it's like you are telling the story, like, and that's like what you're saying, like if we don't tell our own story, then it's either not going to get told or somebody else is going to tell it for us, and it's not going to be accurate, right? So
Exactly.
I really appreciate you and your work you're doing as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, don't want to take up all of your time. I know you're still out in the field working and things of that nature. So I'm just going to wrap up this podcast on a fun and light note with a few random pop questions to leave our listeners with a fun takeaway and just a little food for thought for the day. And so, yeah, the first question I have for you is it's a philosophical question. Do you think nature is moving toward dissolution or integration?
Ooh, like the dissolution of our society, or like
the dissolution of people valuing just like nature in general? Or do you feel like people are finding ways to bring nature into more aspects of maybe even like architecture, like how people build new homes, or determining like where things are being built because they're being mindful of nature, or vice versa? Do you feel like people are kind of losing sight of the importance of nature?
Yeah, that's a deep one. I think that overall the critical mass is moving towards a reconnection. Like, I think everybody recognizes that we need to be connected to the earth, that we are all interconnected beings. And so, like whatever I do to the earth, I do to myself. I feel like that definitely we're all moving towards there. However, I do feel like there's this continued push. It's like capitalism's last gasp of, trying to maintain power, and the people who are basically the capitalists and the ones in power who are pushing our economy to being a destructive one, right? So like all the oil barons, all the ones who are holding on to that power and that wealth are working harder, even more extreme, to keep us on that path. So it's like this separation that's happening. And I feel like it's happening on many different levels in our country, right? Politically, socially as well.
Yeah. What's one thing you feel like you could never outgrow? Keeping things in the theme of agriculture. What's one thing you think you can never outgrow?
Well, I could never outgrow a nice little cuddle session with my children.
Oh,
even when they're old, I'm still gonna want to cuddle with them.
That is so sweet. Favorite season, summer or winter?
Yes. Oh man, I thought for the longest I'm a summer baby, so I love the summer, but I'm recognizing the importance of winter as well.
You didn't sound too excited about that. My birthday's in the summertime, so it's gonna be summertime all the time for me. That's why I'm from Chicago. I'm like, I gotta have some sun.
You don't want to deal with that cold wind.
I don't. I'm not a fan of it. But yeah, that's all the questions I have for you today. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to share, or how people can get in contact with you and just stay connected to the projects and things that you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. So we're, the next phase of our project is we're actually trying to develop micro enterprise from the farm. So we're using the produce that we're growing. A lot of it's going back into the school district, feeding students, feeding families. And then the aspect that we're working on for this season is to develop a business plan and to get more local businesses to carry our produce. We're also doing cut flowers. So we're trying to like really develop that local economy, farm-based economy. And so definitely if there's folks in the Bay who are listening and interested in the work we're doing, check us out. Growing Together East Bay. growingtogetherprojects.org is the website. You can also follow me on Instagram at Tendy, Tendy, the number 43. That's my own business where I sell flowers from my backyard, microgreens from the house. And so really just trying to big up this local economy. Been working with a lot of independent businesses and chefs in Oakland who have been just really dope and supportive of the work. And so, we got to support each other in it. So I want to, highlight the restaurants that are working with us right now, like Bombera, Pomet, Joe's Modern Thai, Chef Sarah Germany, and hopefully we'll add to that list next time we talk. We'll have a much longer list. Rocky's Market, check them out. You guys support local businesses, please. It's really important. and come visit the farm.
So there you have it, folks. You see what I mean? This was a pleasant conversation. Well, at least for me it was, okay? I'd love to know your thoughts, comments, and feedback. So wherever you are listening to this episode, please consider rating the podcast. It really helps me out as an independent podcaster with the algorithm and all the things. You can also leave a review or, again, make a contribution to the show. Your support will greatly be appreciated, and your contributions go toward enhancing the audio experience of this podcast. The funds will go toward microphones that can be shipped to record an episode, potentially renting a dedicated studio space to record any future episodes, and getting a sound engineer and all the other logistics and things that go into this process. The reason why I enjoy having these conversations is because it gives people a peek behind the curtain of what goes into the process. It shares a bit of transparency about what actually went into the work behind it, because it's not always pretty, it's not always easy, and it's not always something that you can just capture on camera. And I think that his story was so relatable, especially for someone like me who works with audio and video or is just a creative and entrepreneur. I think oftentimes people are only seeing the edited highlight version and the end product. But what also came up in this conversation was the journey, the process, and the story behind it. And I think no matter what field you are in, you have to be able to not only do the work, but also show the work and be able to tell others about it, especially if you want to build community or support around it. So I personally like these conversations because it puts language to the things that you may not be able to visually show all the time. And I have so many moments, both personal, creatively, professionally. I have so many moments where there are parts of my personal and creative process that I am sure people will be like, what? Are you serious? Did that really happen? And there was no camera around to capture it. But at least I can tell the story of what happened, and the things like stories and visuals, it creates connections. It sparks ideas, or it can just be pure entertainment. That was another big takeaway from this episode, is when doing the work, you have to remember to rest, recover, recharge, and also have fun. It's not all work. There's also a little bit of play that comes into this process as well. So between this podcast and videos I create, it's kind of like a show and tell. Outside of the professional videos I make, whether that's for clients or my day job, I occasionally like to show what I personally do for fun, how I like to take creative breaks, and other behind the scenes of my process over on my personal YouTube channel. So if you're interested in that, you're more than welcome to check it out. Anything we mentioned in this episode, the links are all included in the show notes of this episode. And also how you can get in touch with Mathew or any of the folks he mentioned. Again, thank you all so much for your support and for listening to this podcast and just getting through my thoughts and all those things. So peace, love, and everything in between. I'm out.